Six friends watch as their companion is beaten to death. They record it. They share it. They call her boyfriend to watch it happen in real time. Then they tell her mother she died from food poisoning. What happened in that luxury villa in Cabo San Lucas will haunt you. The video evidence will disturb you. But what will shock you most is learning that the people who did this to 25-year-old Shanquella Robinson are still walking free today, still living their lives, still refusing to tell the truth about what they did to someone who trusted them completely. This isn't just a story about a vacation gone wrong. This is a story about the darkest depths of human betrayal, about how people you call family can become your worst enemies, about how the justice system can fail someone so completely that 2 years later, her killers are still unpunished. But most disturbing of all, the evidence suggests this wasn't a fight that got out of hand. The evidence suggests this was something much more sinister, something planned, something deliberate, something that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. What really happened during those final hours in paradise? Why did 6 people stand by and watch their friend die? And why are they still free while Shanquella Robinson lies in a grave? By the time you finish watching this investigation, you'll understand why this case has become one of the most controversial and heartbreaking stories of our time. You'll understand why millions of people around the world are demanding justice for Shanquella Robinson. And you'll understand why her story refuses to die, even when the system has failed her at every turn. This is the complete, unfiltered truth about what happened to Shanquella Robinson. And I'm warning you now, once you learn what really happened in that villa, you'll never look at friendship the same way again. Shanquella Robinson was her father's only child, and Bernard Robinson will tell you that she had everything going for herself. At 25 years old, she wasn't just surviving in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was thriving. She was building an empire, brick by brick, braid by braid, dream by dream. Known for her business braiding hair, Shanquella had turned her passion into profit. But this wasn't just any hair braiding business. This was artistry. Women would travel from across Charlotte to sit in her chair, knowing that when they left, they wouldn't just look different, they would feel different. Confident, beautiful, transformed. Her social media presence told the story of a young woman who had figured out the secret to success: hard work, determination, and genuine care for others. Her Instagram was filled with before and after photos of her clients, testimonials from satisfied customers, and glimpses into her life as a successful entrepreneur. But here's what made Shanquella special: success hadn't changed her. Those who knew her described her as the type of person who would literally give you the shirt off her back. She was generous with her time, her money, and her heart. She believed in lifting others up, in helping people feel their best, in making the world a little more beautiful, one person at a time. She was close to her family, especially her mother, Salamandra Robinson. They talked every day. They shared everything. When Shanquella was excited about something, her mother was the first to know. When she was struggling with something, her mother was there to support her. The bond between them was unbreakable, or so they thought. Shanquella also had a tight circle of friends, people she had known for years, people she trusted with her secrets, her dreams, her fears, people she called family, people who called her family in return. These weren't just casual acquaintances. These were people who were supposed to have her back no matter what. She was particularly close to one friend who had been in her life for years, someone she considered a sister, someone she trusted completely, someone who would later become a key figure in the most devastating night of her life. Shanquella was a Winston-Salem State University graduate, proof that she was more than just a pretty face with a talent for hair. She was educated, intelligent, and ambitious. She had studied business, understanding that if she was going to build something lasting, she needed to do it right. Her apartment in Charlotte was a reflection of her success. Nice furniture, beautiful artwork, a closet full of clothes that showed she had taste, and the money to indulge it. But it wasn't ostentatious. It wasn't flashy. It was the home of someone who had worked hard for what she had and appreciated every bit of it. Friends would often gather at Shanquella's place. She was the type of person who loved hosting, loved bringing people together, loved creating memories. Her home was a safe space where people could be themselves, where laughter filled the rooms, where friendships were strengthened and bonds were deepened. She was also building something bigger than just a hair braiding business. She had dreams of expanding, of creating a line of hair care products, of maybe even opening her own salon. She would talk about these dreams with excitement, mapping out plans, setting goals, working toward a future that seemed bright and full of possibility. But perhaps most importantly, Shanquella was happy. She had found her purpose, built her business, maintained her friendships, and created a life that felt meaningful and fulfilling. She was living proof that with hard work and determination, you could achieve anything you set your mind to. So when the opportunity came up to take a vacation with 6 of her closest friends to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, Shanquella saw it as a reward for all her hard work. She had earned this break. She deserved to relax, to have fun, to make memories with people she loved. The trip was supposed to be a celebration. Someone in the group was having a birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with a vacation to paradise? They had rented a beautiful villa, planned activities, and looked forward to a week of sun, fun, and friendship. Shanquella was excited. She posted about the trip on social media, sharing her anticipation with her followers. She talked to her mother about it, discussing what she would pack, what they would do, how much fun they were going to have. She even talked to her boyfriend, sharing her excitement about the adventure ahead. But here's what's truly heartbreaking about this story. Shanquella had no idea that the people she trusted most, the people she called family, the people she was so excited to vacation with, were about to betray her in the most horrific way imaginable. She had no idea that within hours of stepping off that plane in paradise, she would be fighting for her life. She had no idea that the people who were supposed to protect her would be the ones hurting her. She had no idea that the friends she trusted would become her enemies. Most tragically of all, she had no idea that she would never see her family again, never achieve those dreams she had worked so hard for, never get the chance to build the empire she had envisioned. The last photos of Shanquella show a young woman full of life, full of hope, full of excitement for the adventure ahead. She looked happy. She looked healthy. She looked like someone who had everything to live for. Because she did. It's October 28th, 2022. 7 people board a plane bound for Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. 6 of them will return home. 1 of them will come back in a coffin. The group consisted of Shanquella Robinson and 6 people she considered close friends. They had been planning this trip for weeks, maybe months. It was supposed to be a celebration, a birthday party, a chance to escape the stress of daily life and enjoy some time in paradise. They were traveling to San Jose del Cabo, a resort town in Mexico's Baja California Sur, known for its beautiful beaches, luxury resorts, and vibrant nightlife. It's the type of place where people go to forget their troubles, to live in the moment, to create memories that will last a lifetime. The villa they had rented was stunning. Perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, it offered breathtaking views, luxurious amenities, and complete privacy. It was the perfect setting for a group of friends to relax, unwind, and enjoy each other's company. But from the moment they arrived, something was different. Something was wrong. The energy wasn't right. The dynamic between the group members was strained. What should have been excitement and joy was replaced by tension and unease. Earlier video footage shows Robinson excitedly pushing her friends to change into their swimsuits, evidence that she was still trying to maintain the party atmosphere, still trying to have fun despite whatever was happening beneath the surface. But the friends weren't reciprocating her energy. They seemed distant, cold, almost hostile. It was as if they were playing roles in a movie, pretending to be friends while harboring something dark and sinister beneath the surface. What was happening behind the scenes? What had caused this shift in their relationships? Had there been arguments before the trip? Jealousy? Resentment? Or was this something that had been building for a long time, waiting for the perfect moment to explode? The answers to these questions may never be fully known, because the 6 people who could provide them have chosen to remain silent. They've hired lawyers, built walls of protection around themselves, and refused to speak publicly about what happened in that villa. But the evidence suggests that whatever happened wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a moment of passion or a fight that got out of hand. The evidence suggests that what happened to Shanquella Robinson was calculated, deliberate, and cruel beyond imagination. Think about the logistics for a moment. 7 people travel together to a foreign country. They rent a villa together. They're supposed to be celebrating together. But instead of celebration, we get violence. Instead of friendship, we get betrayal. Instead of protection, we get abandonment. How does that happen? How do 6 people simultaneously decide to turn against the 7th? How do they coordinate their actions? How do they maintain their silence afterward? The only way this makes sense is if it was planned. If they went to Mexico with the intention of hurting Shanquella Robinson. If they used the trip as an opportunity to do something they had been thinking about for a long time. But why? What could Shanquella have done to deserve this? What could have motivated 6 people to conspire against her? What could have driven them to such extreme violence? The truth is, we may never know the full story. But what we do know is this. From the moment they arrived in that villa, Shanquella Robinson was in danger. She was surrounded by people who meant her harm. She was isolated, vulnerable, and completely unaware of what was about to happen to her. The irony is devastating. She was in paradise, but she was actually in hell. She was surrounded by friends, but she was actually surrounded by enemies. She thought she was safe, but she was actually in the most dangerous situation of her life. And the people who could have protected her, the people who should have protected her, were the very people who were planning to hurt her. What happened next will haunt you forever. What happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature, about friendship, about the capacity for evil that exists in seemingly ordinary people. She was found dead in a resort development on October 29th, just one day after arriving in paradise. But the hours leading up to her death were filled with terror, violence, and betrayal that defies comprehension. Beginning with a video of the incident being uploaded to Twitter, a wave of viral cell phone footage began surfacing on several social media outlets of a naked African-American woman being viciously beaten by one of her female acquaintances in a bedroom of their vacation rental. But this wasn't just any video. This was evidence of a murder. This was documentation of the most brutal betrayal imaginable. This was proof that 6 people stood by and watched as their friend was beaten to death. The viral video emerged on social media that appeared to show a woman, later identified as one of the Cabo 6, beating a naked Robinson in a room, while 2 spectators recorded the incident. Think about that for a moment. Multiple people were recording this violence. Multiple people were documenting this murder. Multiple people were turning this tragedy into entertainment. A man standing nearby can be heard saying, "Quella, can you at least fight back?" These words will echo in your mind long after you finish watching this investigation. Here was someone who could have stopped the violence. Someone who could have helped. Someone who could have intervened. Instead, he taunted her. He mocked her. He treated her suffering like a game. What kind of person does that? What kind of human being watches someone being beaten and responds with mockery instead of help? What kind of friend treats another friend like that? But it gets worse. So much worse. The suit claims that the Cabo 6 posted the video to social media and video called Jackson's boyfriend so he could watch the attack. They didn't just record the violence. They shared it. They made it public. They turned Shanquella's final moments into a spectacle for others to watch. But even more disturbing, they called her boyfriend. They made him watch in real time as the woman he loved was being murdered. They forced him to witness her final moments of agony, her desperate attempts to defend herself, her gradual weakening as the violence continued. What kind of evil does that? What kind of cruelty forces someone to watch the person they love being killed? What kind of sadistic pleasure do you have to derive from causing that kind of pain? The video footage shows Shanquella in a vulnerable state, naked and defenseless, being attacked by someone she trusted. The violence is so brutal, so one-sided, so devastating that viewers struggled to understand how anyone could just stand by and watch. The medical evidence later revealed the extent of the damage. The death certificate lists the cause of death as severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation. In medical terms, this means that the connection between her skull and spine was severed. The violence was so extreme that it caused the kind of injury typically seen in high-speed car accidents or falls from great heights. But this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a fall. This wasn't a car crash. This was the result of deliberate, sustained violence inflicted by someone who was supposed to care about her. The atlas and axis are the first 2 vertebrae in the neck, the ones that allow your head to move and turn. When these bones are damaged, when the connection between skull and spine is severed, death is almost inevitable. The victim experiences paralysis, difficulty breathing, and eventually, death. Shanquella would have known what was happening to her. She would have felt herself weakening, felt herself losing control of her body, felt herself dying. And through it all, she would have been looking at the faces of people she trusted, people she called friends, people she expected to help her. But they didn't help. They watched. They recorded. They shared. They laughed. In an update on Shanquella Robinson's case, a concierge at the villa told police that her friends laughed after she passed away. After she died, after they had watched her suffer and struggle and eventually succumb to her injuries, they laughed. They found humor in her death. They celebrated her demise. Then they asked to be taken to dinner. Think about that. They had just watched their friend die. They had just participated in or witnessed a murder. They had just experienced what should have been the most traumatic moment of their lives. And their response was to laugh and ask for restaurant recommendations. What kind of people are these? What kind of souls do they have? What kind of hearts beat in their chests that allow them to find joy in the suffering of others? The answer is simple. They're not people. They're monsters. They're predators who disguise themselves as friends. They're wolves who pretended to be sheep until the moment came to reveal their true nature. But the crime wasn't over. The betrayal wasn't complete. Because what they did next was perhaps even more evil than the murder itself. When Shanquella Robinson's mother received the phone call that would change her life forever, she had no idea that everything she was being told was a lie. She had no idea that the people she trusted to take care of her daughter had actually killed her. Initially, her family was told she had died of alcohol poisoning. On the day of her death, Robinson's mother was allegedly told by her 6 friends, dubbed the Cabo Six, that she died due to alcohol poisoning. Imagine being a mother and receiving that call. Your daughter is dead. She died suddenly, unexpectedly, from alcohol poisoning. You're devastated, confused, heartbroken. But you accept the explanation because it comes from people your daughter trusted. People you trusted. But it was all a lie. Every word of it. The Cabo Six had coordinated their story. They had agreed on what to say, how to say it, and who would make the call. They had planned their deception as carefully as they had planned their crime. Why alcohol poisoning? Because it's believable. Young people on vacation sometimes drink too much. Accidents happen. Tragedies occur. It's sad, but it's not criminal. It's not murder. It's not something that would lead to an investigation or arrests or consequences. It was the perfect cover story. Or so they thought. But their lies started falling apart almost immediately. When Shanquella's body was returned to the United States, when an autopsy was performed, when the medical evidence was examined, it became clear that she hadn't died from alcohol poisoning at all. The death certificate, obtained by Nextars WJZY, lists the cause of death as severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation. These are not the injuries you get from drinking too much. These are the injuries you get from extreme violence. These are the injuries you get from being murdered. So the Cabo Six had to change their story. Now it wasn't alcohol poisoning. Now it was something else. They told different versions to different people, trying to find a lie that would stick, a deception that would protect them from the consequences of their actions. But here's what's truly evil about their cover-up. They didn't just lie to protect themselves. They lied to inflict additional cruelty on Shanquella's family. They forced her mother to grieve based on false information. They made her believe that her daughter had died from her own poor choices rather than from the violence of people she trusted. Imagine the guilt that Shanquella's mother must have felt. Imagine the self-blame, the wondering if she had failed as a parent, if she had somehow contributed to her daughter's death by not teaching her to be more careful about drinking. That guilt was intentional. That pain was deliberate. The Cabo Six wanted Shanquella's family to suffer not just from her death, but from the false belief that she was somehow responsible for her own demise. It was psychological torture inflicted on a grieving family by the very people who had murdered their daughter. But the lies didn't stop there. When the video footage began circulating on social media, when the truth about what happened in that villa began to emerge, the Cabo Six and their lawyers went into damage control mode. They hired expensive attorneys. They released carefully crafted statements. They portrayed themselves as innocent victims of a tragic accident. They claimed they were being unfairly targeted, unfairly blamed, unfairly accused. They showed no remorse for what they had done. They expressed no sympathy for Shanquella's family. They took no responsibility for their actions. Instead, they played the victim, claiming that they were the ones being persecuted. The audacity is breathtaking. The arrogance is stunning. The complete lack of humanity is terrifying. But perhaps most disturbing of all, their strategy has largely worked. Despite the video evidence, despite the autopsy results, despite the witness testimony, despite the mountain of proof that they were responsible for Shanquella's death, they remained free. They continue to live their lives. They continue to enjoy their freedom while Shanquella lies in a grave. The cover-up isn't just about what they did in Mexico. It's about what they've continued to do every day since. It's about their refusal to tell the truth, their refusal to accept responsibility, their refusal to face the consequences of their actions. They've turned their lives into a lie, and they've forced everyone around them to live in that lie as well. Their families, their friends, their communities, everyone has been contaminated by their deception. But the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it. And the truth about what happened to Shanquella Robinson is finally coming to light. The investigation into Shanquella Robinson's murder began immediately after her body was discovered. Mexican authorities, recognizing the severity of the case, launched a comprehensive investigation that would eventually lead to an arrest warrant being issued. But from the beginning, the investigation faced challenges that would ultimately lead to one of the most frustrating examples of justice denied in recent memory. The Mexican authorities did their job. They examined the evidence, interviewed witnesses, analyzed the video footage, and consulted with medical experts. They determined that Shanquella Robinson had been murdered, and they issued an arrest warrant for the person responsible. But the suspect was no longer in Mexico. The Cabo Six had returned to the United States immediately after Shanquella's death, claiming they needed to get home to grieve and process their trauma. They had left the country before the investigation could be completed, before they could be properly questioned, before they could be arrested. This created a complex international legal situation. The suspect was in the United States, but the crime had been committed in Mexico. Extradition would be required to bring the suspect back to face justice. And extradition cases are notoriously complicated, time-consuming, and difficult to prosecute. Meanwhile, the FBI began their own investigation into the case. Federal officials with the U.S. Attorney's offices in the Middle and Western Districts of North Carolina and the FBI met with the family of Ms. Shanquella Robinson and family representatives to offer their condolences and present the findings of the federal investigation into the death of Ms. Robinson. The investigation into the circumstances surrounding the death of Ms. Robinson has been a priority for federal prosecutors and the FBI. The FBI has worked diligently to conduct a detailed and thorough investigation of the evidence available in this case. The FBI investigation was extensive, thorough, and professional. They interviewed witnesses, analyzed evidence, consulted with experts, and spent months building a case. They had access to the video footage, the autopsy reports, witness statements, and all the other evidence that had been collected. But then, in April 2023, the FBI announced something that shocked Shanquella's family and supporters around the world. Federal prosecutors would not bring charges in the murder of Shanquella Robinson. The official reason given was lack of evidence. But how can there be a lack of evidence when there's video footage of the crime? How can there be a lack of evidence when there's medical testimony about the cause of death? How can there be a lack of evidence when there are multiple witnesses who were present during the incident? The FBI's decision not to prosecute was devastating to Shanquella's family. They had cooperated fully with the investigation, provided all the information they had, and trusted that the system would deliver justice for their daughter. Instead, they were told that the people who had killed their daughter would face no consequences for their actions. The family's attorneys questioned the FBI's decision, pointing out the strength of the evidence and the clarity of the video footage. They argued that the case was prosecutable, that the evidence was overwhelming, and that justice demanded that charges be filed. But the FBI stood by their decision. They claimed that the evidence wasn't sufficient to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. They said that the video footage, while disturbing, didn't provide enough context to determine exactly what had happened. They argued that the medical evidence, while clear about the cause of death, didn't definitively identify the perpetrator. These explanations were unsatisfactory to anyone who had seen the evidence. The video footage clearly showed who was responsible for the violence. The medical evidence clearly showed that the violence was the cause of death. The witness testimony clearly showed that multiple people were present and could have intervened. But the FBI's decision was final. There would be no federal charges. There would be no federal prosecution. The Cabo Six would remain free to continue their lives while Shanquella's family was left to grieve without justice. The Mexican authorities were equally frustrated. They had issued an arrest warrant, but without cooperation from the United States, they couldn't bring the suspect back to face trial. The suspect remained in the United States, protected by legal technicalities and jurisdictional complications. The failure of both justice systems to hold anyone accountable for Shanquella's murder was a travesty of justice. It sent a message that if you kill someone in a foreign country, if you return home quickly enough, if you hire good lawyers and stay quiet, you can get away with murder. But Shanquella's family refused to accept this outcome. They refused to let their daughter's death go unpunished. They refused to let the system's failure be the final word in their daughter's story. So they took matters into their own hands. Just as Shanquella's friends were getting away with murder, social media saw the assault video, and a fire was lit in thousands of people demanding justice for Shanquella. So many of us used our voices to bring awareness about her low-down dirty friends, their betrayal, and obvious murder. When the video footage of Shanquella's murder began circulating on social media, it created a firestorm of outrage unlike anything seen in recent memory. The footage was so disturbing, so clearly documented, and so obviously criminal that people around the world demanded immediate action. The video later went viral on social media, with many people across America calling for justice for Robinson. But this wasn't just viral in the typical sense. This was a movement. This was a demand for justice that transcended racial, geographic, and social boundaries. People were horrified by what they saw. They couldn't believe that 6 people had stood by and watched while their friend was beaten to death. They couldn't understand how anyone could be so cruel, so callous, so inhuman. What do her friends, who went on the trip with her, know about it? The video soon went viral, and users began wanting answers immediately. Notable celebrities and public figures such as Viola Davis, Kyrie Irving, and the mayor of Charlotte posted and spoke about the incident on their social media platforms. The social media response was immediate and overwhelming. Celebrities, politicians, activists, and ordinary citizens all shared the video, demanded answers, and called for justice. The hashtag Justice for Shanquella began trending worldwide. But the social media response wasn't just about sharing the video. It was about investigating the case, identifying the perpetrators, and holding them accountable. Internet sleuths began analyzing the footage, identifying the people involved, and sharing information about their identities and backgrounds. The Cabo Six suddenly found themselves in the spotlight. Their names, photos, and social media profiles were shared widely. Their past behavior was scrutinized. Their character was questioned. Their lies were exposed. They tried to hide. They deleted their social media accounts. They avoided public appearances. They refused to speak to the media. But the internet never forgets, and social media never lets go. The pressure was intense and unrelenting. Everywhere they went, people recognized them. Everywhere they turned, they faced questions about what they had done. Their lives became a prison of public scrutiny and social ostracism. But even more importantly, the social media response kept the case alive. When the FBI announced that they wouldn't be filing charges, when the Mexican authorities seemed unable to extradite the suspects, when the official justice system failed, social media refused to let the case die. People continued sharing the video, demanding answers, and calling for justice. They organized protests, created petitions, and lobbied politicians. They turned Shanquella's case into a cause célèbre, a symbol of the failure of the justice system to protect victims of violence. The search for justice in Shanquella Robinson's case continues. Her family refuses to give up, and neither should we. But this isn't the only case where friends turned into enemies, where trust was betrayed, and where justice seems out of reach. If you have any story like this, put it in the comment below so that we would look into it. Stay tuned, because the story we're bringing you next will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. You won't want to miss it. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned.